today's video, I'm going to be showing the process of doing a Chinese-style handle wrap. You often see these with silk cord on antique Johns, other swords from China. I'm going to be doing this on a, I guess, semi-traditional Chinese Dadao or war sword. You can use this same type of handle wrap on just about anything. It's a really comfortable grip. Gives a little bit more bulk than most of the handle wraps that you typically see on knives today. So we'll be working on this section, and let's get started. Now my first step is to use a short piece of cord, paracord, to get an idea how much paracord I'm going to need. So I'm going to start off with doing a quick section of my wrap here, and I am going to cross each time. So I'm doing that same cross on both sides, try to make sure I get the same over-under each time. And I want to make sure I keep this pretty tight. But in this case, I don't want it super tight. I actually need a little space for the next part of the wrap. So that gets me to there. I'll measure that, and we'll see where we are. You stay. So that got me about 2.5 inches of wrap, and I have a total of, let's say, 10.5 inches to wrap. So we'll do a quick calculation on the length of this cord and the length we need to do. I'll add some extra just in case, but that way I make sure I have enough without having way too much. Quick calculation indicates I need about 4 arm lengths to do this distance. I did 4 plus a little extra. So now I just need to find the center, and I'll get started on this. Okay, starting in the center, I do that exact same wrap I was showing. Oop. Remember, keep them going, keep them crossing the same direction to keep this nice and neat. So as I get close to this end, just continuing with that same pattern. One thing is I have already put the finish on. This is a hot waxed finish that I put on the handle. So whatever you're going to do for rust protection, unless you want to coat the paracord as well, make sure you have put your rust protection on before you start wrapping. Okay, so just about there. I'm going to come to this side. Now in this case, all I'm gonna do for now is tuck this extra through. Got more extra than I really needed, but that's okay. This style of wrap is essentially self-tightening. So as I go, it will actually tighten up this initial wrap. If you were doing a little bit more of a traditional Japanese style wrap, you would have just done this, except kept it a bit tighter. Well, quite a bit tighter. You know, this is firm on there, but nothing crazy. So next step will be to begin weaving through that with another piece of paracord. In order to do this weaving process, I'll be attaching one of these, a little brass, I believe Matt calls them a fid. It's basically a brass needle that is drilled and tapped on one end. Now, in order to attach this, I find the easiest is to trim your paracord at an angle. And holding too many things in my hands here, but now we cook that. You want to make sure it's pretty well toasted. You want just a little bit of a point on there. Now that's where this threading comes in. But now I can screw that on the end. It's not a perfect hold, but it's surprisingly good. So, there we are. Do the same thing to the other end and we're good to go. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to just be using black paracord because the customer's looking for something, you know, somewhat tactical. But you can easily go through this process using a contrasting paracord. Yeah, the use of that needle allows me to get in underneath. Now, I'm going to come like so. Got my paracord twisted. Got to make sure we get that worked out here. Trying to get as much of that twist out here as possible. You can see that really, A, locks in that X and starts to bulk up, and just because of the adding this extra line in here, I'm tightening everything. Now from here I have a bunch of options. The most traditional is to just take these two in a straight line down, you know, in two straight lines coming down. I've done them before where this piece actually runs down the center and they kind of twist around each other. But in this case, I'm going to go with the more traditional route and do the two straight lines. It's really very much, you know, up to your creativity and imagination at this point. Case, just making sure that paracord is staying pretty straight. You can see, you know, this is a process that takes some time, but overall is pretty straightforward. And I especially like the fact that I don't need to hold anything tight while I'm doing it. That's that sort of self-tightening self-locking aspect of this. Already you get to see a bit of that, how this style of wrap very quickly dresses up the sort of traditional X wrap. Now I do like, you could run all the way down with each side, or with each needle. I prefer to do both together. So, do one side, then the other, then the other, kind of going back and forth. Makes it easier, I find, to keep things straight in here. And also gives me the opportunity to kind of keep track of how tight things are getting. If I went all the way down one side first, I might find that the second side, or the second string here, was getting too tight. Because we have to remember, still need to do the other side of this, and that will tighten things up even more. So that's why I left myself that end, and I just kind of wrapped it around so it won't loosen. But I want the option of bringing in extra material if things get to be too tight. Okay, so it pretty much just continues like this all the way down. So as I get down close to this end, I'm feeling confident in how tight things are, or how loose. So now I'm going to go ahead and tie this off. Now the way I'm going to do that is by not really tying it, at least not at this point. I'm going to come underneath both, like so. And then essentially do the weave that I'm doing with this, but come back down through. I should be able to use this tool, the evil dentist tool, or medieval dentist tool. Essentially, just make sure pretty tight coming under, and then pretty tight coming down. So for now, I will just leave it like that. That should keep me from losing any more tightness there. If I want to, and I guess just for fun I will, I'll just tie a little overhand like so. Now I can finish out my weave here without worrying that things are kind of loosening up ahead of me. This tool, just made from mild steel, can also be very helpful in any kind of paracord work if you need to get under and pull something tight, or in this case, even using these needles. Sometimes it's difficult to get under something, so you can just lift up. You can also use that, in a case like this, if I wanted to go through and straighten my line a little bit. It allows for just pushing small areas of the paracord around. The ends of these needles are purposefully rounded and polished, so it's essentially impossible to damage the paracord as you're going. That's very important. We don't want to tear any of the little strands, end up having the paracord fray too quickly. Get these last couple. The right way. Yeah, that's the right way around. Now a lot of this will tighten up in the final. If I wanted to, I could, and I may decide to do this eventually. I can go back and maybe weave through this last wrap again. It's another great thing about these needles. I just unscrew off the end, leave my ends dangling, so I can come back to these later on. Now, flip over, we just do the other side. On this side, you can see we start off with one straight section, and that's pretty much impossible to avoid, at least as far as I know. If somebody else knows better, let us know, because it'd be fun to be able to start with an X on both sides. But I think you always have to start with a straight section on one side. But now, so what I've done is just gone under that, and if I wanted to, I could, for example, twist those around each other and then start my pattern. I think I'm going to just start my pattern, although I am going to start off with these reversed, so that I'm going over and then under here. So, and now the other side is already done, so this side is much tighter, which generally it's still easy enough to pull the needles through, but it's a lot harder to get them started. So, got that side. Wait. Whoop. Got a little overexcited there. So, make sure I'm happy with how I'm starting out here, and you can see that right away tightened up this area. And now we just continue down the full length. You can, this would be where using one of these might come in handy, just to get the needle underneath, kind of open the door, as it were. Yeah, definitely when you start working through the second side is when you notice the self-tightening aspects of this pattern. I would not want to do this without the needles. So there is also a different way of doing this exact same wrap, which is to actually lay your straight pieces on first. Generally, you kind of tape them in place or something so they don't move. And then you do your X going through the straight. I find it much easier to do the X's first and then the straight, just because the X requires so much more paracord, or whatever type of cord you are using. It uses so much more. So if you're doing this the increasingly difficult stitching through, as things are tightening up with those very long lengths, it's much more difficult. Even just stitching through with those long lengths, because now, everything's weaving and now you're having to pull all that material through. So it's nice to do that part with these, do the more intricate weaving aspect or stitching aspect with the shorter lengths of cord. See how the dental tool really comes in handy. Yeah, from here we just continue down the full length, getting this put together, and we'll get to finalizing our knots at the end. So as I continue down this side, it's definitely, I'm not going to say it's getting a lot tighter. It's definitely getting tighter. Definitely get a good finger workout doing this. But that's good. I want it to be tightening up. But this is why I said at the beginning, you don't want to do that original X wrap too tight. You need to have a little bit of slack to get this additional pair of threads through there. And you can, if you've made it too loose, if you did your original X a bit looser than this, you can pull these pieces tighter. You can see right now they're kind of going up and down. They can be pulled tighter, thus doing more tightening on your initial X's. Now with this dental tool, you do have to be more cautious not to penetrate the thread, the cord, because that sort of by necessity is a bit sharper, so it's easier to mess up and get in there. So a couple variations you can do on this. Obviously there's plenty of different ways you might switch up the stitching or wrapping pattern. But if you wanted a bit more bulk in your handle, you could, for example, if you started off with your handle a little bit narrower, you do a wrap of leather glued on underneath. That'd look pretty neat because you'd see it there through the windows. You can also put a thin piece of wood on to, again, give you that neat contrasting color underneath, but also, especially if you shape it as kind of a half oval, or or a bit domed before you lay it in, lay it onto the steel. It also really gives a nice shape to the grip. Doing it just this way with the cord directly over the forged steel, you end up, 3/4, maybe 5/8 to 3/4 of an inch thick. And I started off with a just over 1/4 inch thick handle. So, if you want something a little bit more than that, not a bad idea. Another thing you can add under here that I've done before is like a textured copper or brass. And all of these things don't, it's easier if they're glued down. But once this wrap gets on there, they're not going anywhere, so you don't need to worry about the strength of your joint to the handle. Obviously, all things being equal, stronger joint is better, but it isn't absolutely necessary that it be super strong. Oh, jeez. Okay. I'll see you folks at the end of the handle. Okay. So, what I need to do here is get this last stitch through. I have gone ahead and tied a square knot on the other side in those pieces that were just kind of hanging there, just to make sure I don't accidentally pull any slack into the system as I finish up here. One interesting thing is a lot of the original wraps were actually done just a single piece of cord. I did this entire process, which, one advantage of that is when you don't have as many ends to use up, or finalize, but I don't think it really makes much difference strength-wise. Having the extra ends makes a huge difference, or using the extra pieces makes a huge difference in terms of ease of putting this together. So now what I am going to do, just so the two sides kind of match, is I am going to tie, go that way. Yeah, I want to go that way. So I'm going to just tie a square knot here. Make sure I go the right way each time. So that way these two sides match pretty well. Now I will flip this over. We'll finalize everything on the other side. So, looks a little tangled up here. I'm going to see if I can't just use my extra material to pull things into slightly better alignment. Not too worried in one way or the other. This is, after all, going to be tactical. So performance is more important than appearance. But it's always good to make these things as attractive as possible. So now we have all these ends here. And what do you do with them? Now what I'm going to do is a type of weave that I think looks particularly good. Normally you would do this with 4 strands or 8 strands. I think it'll work out nicely with the 6. So I'm going to pull those through that way. These through here. Now I don't need my brass ends anymore, at least not at the moment. Extra weight to mess with my work this through. Okay, start here. So 2 from here, 2 from here. Those go through. These come through. Those go through. And these. Basically, it is 2 twists twisted together. And by the way, you can also braid hair this way. Very often on Chinese wrap, these ends continue down and go into a fabulously complicated knot. I don't know how to do that. So I come down a little ways, trying to make this as long as I like. I've got a lot of extra material here, so I can go along with this. That's necessary. What I'll do is I do really like the appearance of this particular braid. Tight enough, so we'll pause here for a moment. I'm going to put a clamp on this. Okay, so just getting another couple rounds in there. Just clamp it here. So worry about that. There. And that should hold this all pretty well. So now what I'm going to do is take 2 of my strands, preferably ones on opposite sides. Got this clamp on there, can't see which is which. Swap out your strands there, Peter. Let's try to get this one. There a little bit. Got to trim this end and get a needle on it. both of these ends that I have picked out. Now, essentially what I want to do is pick a direction, pick a thread, cord, follow it. I'm doubling back on my previous one. Well, that's fine. Oh, went under only one. Once you get this process started, it's a lot easier because then you can see it. Take the clamp over. See what you got. Pause for this point. Once I do this other one, and it's complicated. Very quickly, this started to tighten up also. It's very much like the first portion coming down the handle there. Initial weave may not be all that tight, but then you start getting back in there. Things tighten up fast. Same level as the other one. Nice thing is with these wheels, you can stab yourself. Doesn't really do much. Okay, so that's got those guys. Now I should be able to take that off because I've locked up that end. Alright, so with that clamp taken off, just take each of these down one more. I think they were probably far enough, but I like a nice fat section at the end. And finalizing, holding everything in place. Okay, so no longer need my ends. These, they're all set. So now pick two other ends. I'll get this other long one. Right? This one, and we'll say this one is almost like that. So, what I'll do is essentially repeat that same process. Pick a direction I feel like this can follow nicely. I might come back this way, for example. These are likely to be even tighter now because I've already started. Oops, somehow got inside there. Inside the other piece of paracord. There we are. Perfect. Does start to get pretty tricky to fish these through. Let's see this one here. You can, as long as you're careful at this point, make use of awl or something a little bit pointier, or a marlin spike would be perfect for this. Those of you who are into traditional sailing knots, if you're familiar with a marlin spike. Make sure I'm following the right side there. Did it the wrong way altogether. Easy to lose track of where you're trying to go at this point. There's a lot of things going on. Okay, so I think you probably get the idea. I'll now weave, all my remaining ends back into this last section. Make a little bit thicker area here. So, now that we've got these woven back in, all that remains is to trim them short, cook them, seal those ends. If they don't end up quite, I like to give them a good cooking so they end up pretty dark. Dark enough to match. Actually dye them, but I try to give them enough of a cooking here that they blend in pretty well. Again, if you were doing this as a traditional wrap or a replacement for a traditional wrap, you would probably want to come up with a slightly more elegant finish. Maybe trim them off so these ends are inside the knot. But I'm going to leave that level of creativity up to you. Yeah, those I'd say are good enough. I'll cook this one. It's sticking out a little pointy. It's getting hot. Okay. So as you can see, we've finished up our knot, finished up our wrap. Everything's on there nice and tight, and we're good to go. Thanks for watching.